Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City. Over 25 years covering the Philadelphia Eagles. And this one is a very interesting season where the Eagles have added a lot of firepower. They have a high-profile second-year quarterback. They went out and made a lot of necessary moves, but a lot goes into this first game here with the Kansas City Chiefs in week number 2, coming off of a long week looming. Doug Pederson was asked today whether he thought this was kind of one of those must-win games, and they're all must-win in the NFL, Dave. But this one seems like it has a little bit different feeling coming out of the gates. You know, usually Washington is like the third of the 3 NFC East rivals here, but it seems like this game here has a little bit more impact than some of these other Eagles-Redskin early season games might.
Yeah, I think so, only because the expectations are so high for the team this year that if they were to, they're going to have a tough time winning in Kansas City, like you said, with Kansas City having a few extra days to prepare. And then, so to go 0-2 would be a pretty difficult thing for the fans to swallow and for the players, too, for that matter. So I think that puts a little more pressure or a little more higher expectations on the opener on Sunday than normal.
Hey, Dave, I know we'll dive into this game and some of the things that you saw over the preseason to get ready, but I want to get your take. You wrote a piece about Mike Lombardi yesterday. Unimpressed with Doug Pederson. He said he's the most unqualified quarterback coach in the league. He said he's not a head coach. He's the most unqualified guy. You wrote about it yesterday. What is your take on the comments from Mike Lombardi?
Well, Mike and I had an exchange of emails over the last couple of days, and I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree on some things. Personally, I was just a little, I was taken aback and, quite frankly, a little mad, maybe. I just don't see how anybody can come to the conclusion that Doug Pederson was the most unqualified in 3 decades. I mean, is he the best coach in the NFL? Probably not. And he's probably going to struggle to stay here more than a few years. I mean, he's going to have to prove himself worthy. But the fact that he was, maybe he wasn't, the be all end all offensive coordinator of the Chiefs, but league for it was an assistant coach before he became the coordinator. It was Donovan McNabb's position coach for a few years too. So, and you talk about guys like even Andy Reid, who wasn't a coordinator or a head coach at any level, including high school and college, before he became the Eagles head coach. Chip Kelly had no NFL experience whatsoever before the Eagles hired him in 2013. So, you may not be a Pederson fan, but I don't think that his qualifications should have been so quickly dismissed like that.
Yeah, and I wonder from you, Dave, how much of a hand do you think Pederson's lack of experience or his being the head coach played in them being 7-9, and how much of a role do you think he'll play in the success or failure of this year's team?
It did have something to do with last year. His game day decisions, his aggressiveness, his mistakes from the sideline, that contributed to the 7-9 record. However, he was playing with a rookie quarterback, was dealing with injuries up and down the offensive line, didn't have Lane Johnson for 10 games. The defense was in flux. The corners struggled once again. So, I'm not willing to put all the blame on Doug. But I do think I also think that he does have to show progress this year. Another 7-9 season isn't going to cut it, considering what like you had mentioned before, the upgrades they've made on the offense especially. So I do think that Doug has a lot to prove this year, but I don't think this struggle. And that was kind of the point I was making. I know, like people have pointed out, the mistakes that he made last year, but that you can't take away the 12 years he had as an NFL quarterback. The fact that he learned under Mike Holmgren and learned under Andy Reid, learned under Don Shula for that matter. So I think he wasn't their first choice, but I just don't think that he was. I don't think he was the buffoon that some people are making him out to be. I think he was qualified to get the job. Whether he was the best choice remains to be seen.
Dave Weinberg with us. Dave, the word aggressiveness was something that was addressed today with regard to Doug Pederson and his coaching style. Do you think that's something that will continue this season?
Yeah, I do. Although I think he'll be a little more careful about when and where he uses it. But I think that's just in his nature. Like I just mentioned, is the fact that he's been around the league so long. He knows when to go for it and when not to. And I think he was just trying to, I don't know, maybe set the tone. And I think last year he kind of deep down knew that the Eagles weren't maybe as talented as some other teams. So you have to compensate by take some risks, take some chances that you might not normally take. I don't think you'll see that as often this year because Wentz has another year of experience under his belt. They actually have more talent around him. But I do think it's just in Doug's nature, I think, to be an aggressive kind of play caller. And I don't see that changing a whole lot, though. I do think he'll be a little more conservative, but not that much.
Hey, Dave, going back to what we're talking about here with Pederson, you talked about him not having a lot of background in terms of high-profile coaching position. He was a position coach. He had a little cup of coffee as the coordinator in Kansas City, but I guess we all kind of feel Andy really ran this stuff. But how much do you put into stock in terms of observing a coach being good or bad in the way that he knows his limitations? Like, a lot of coaches don't want to hire Jim Schwartz because he's such a high-profile defensive coordinator that it overshadows the head coach almost. Don't you have to give Doug some credit for knowing his limitations, and isn't that part of being a good coach?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's a very good point. And Eagles fans certainly learned that with Chip Kelly. I mean, Chip thought that he invented the game pretty much, with all the innovations and the high-tempo offense and defense, and some of the other quirky little things that he brought to the table. Turns out that wasn't the case. And I don't think Chip thought he had any limitations, and that's what wound up costing him. And Doug, to his credit, I mean, yes, he does. I think he does know his limitations, but I also think that he's grown a lot over this past year. I think he learned a lot from last season, and I think he's going to take those lessons and apply them this year. I think you'll see him. He's already seemed to be more assertive than he was last year. I know he's talked as a player's coach, but he also knows that he has to be more of an authoritative figure, I think, than he was last year. And I've kind of seen that just from observing him, the way he goes about practices and things. I think he does have more of a leadership role, more of an authoritative role than he did last year. And I think that'll help him this season.
Dave Weinberg with us, Press of Atlantic City, Eagles beat writer. Dave, the Eagles' history and their lack of success in Washington playing the Redskins at FedEx Field. Can you put your finger on why they've struggled down there and how you think they're going to fix that Sunday?
Well, last year, 2013 started out pretty good. The Chip Kelly's first game ever.
It's the last time they won there.
Yeah. And there's been a variety of things that have happened in the last few visits. I mean, Deshaun Jackson seemed to always come up with big games. Ryan Kerrigan as well. So it's been a variety of things. I think last year, primarily, both games really were without Lane Johnson, and they also had some other injuries. So Vitae was forced to make his professional debut against Ryan Kerrigan, and then everybody knows that didn't go very well. So I think that it seems like the Eagles are really I don't want to say they want to win. They really want to win this game. It sounds stupid, but I do think that they're well aware of this 5-game losing streak, and I think this put even more of an emphasis on the game on Sunday.
Dave Weinberg, Press of Atlantic City, covers the Eagles as they get ready for the Washington Redskins. Let me get your opinion, Dave, on the impact you think Alshon Jeffrey makes to this team. When you get a guy like that, it changes the complexion of an offense. They didn't have that guy the last couple of years, really. I mean, Deshaun Jackson wasn't even really this kind of guy. I mean, Deshaun was more of the big play guy. So this is a completely different type of maybe Macklin the one year we had a pretty good year, a couple of years back, but even Jeffrey probably trumps him.
What's that?
I said even Macklin, he had a good year a couple of years ago, but even Alshon Jeffrey kind of trumps what he brought to the offense. So how do you see his addition maybe changing the look of this offense?
On paper, it should be a very big difference. I mean, he's potentially the guy that can. He's a true number one receiver, which they, like you said, they haven't had in a while, probably since T.O. was here, at least in 2004. So that adds another dimension to the offense. They really didn't have anybody to rely upon the last few years. Although I'm still kind of withholding my judgment on Alshon, only because he didn't have a very good year last year. He really hasn't had a very good year for a couple of years. So I want to see him show the potential that he showed a couple of years back. Same thing with Torrey Smith. I think that both of them work well together and add that they add different things. They bring different things to the table. Torrey can, take the top off the defense the way Deshaun, not as well as Deshaun, but he's a legitimate downfield threat, which they also lacked last year. And now you have Alshon pairing with him. I think both of those guys play up to their potential. I think the Eagles are really going to put a lot of points on the board this year.
A lot of people have made that comment about Alshon, that he really had his best years when Brandon Marshall was across from him in Chicago, and that he tailed off a bit when Brandon wasn't there. So is that a concern that Alshon isn't the guy that maybe he's perceived to be?
But I do think that I think the more weapons you around him with, the better off you're going to be. And in addition to Torrey Smith, I think Zach Ertz is really poised to finally live up to the potential that everybody has seen with him. And there's no question they have to establish a running game that wasn't there last year. You can't have Wentz throwing the ball that many times and expect to have success. So you need to have that balance. Know whether LeGarrette Blount is able to do that. I'm kind of wondering. Seems to have lost a step from what I could tell. Not in the best shape yet either. So they're going to have to mix in Darren Sproles, of course, and even Wendell Smallwood. So, but they do need that balance. And if they can get it, I don't think all the pressure is just on Alshon to prove himself and to carry this offense, which is a good thing. The more balance you can have, the better off you're going to be.
Dave Weinberg with us. Dave, Doug Pederson today was asked about Wendell Smallwood, since you bring up the running game, and he was asked if Wendell Smallwood is the kick returner, and very simply said he will be back there, yes. So Mike and I went back and forth a little bit. Does that sort of hint how the Eagles are going to use the running backs, at least maybe for this game, game one?
Well, Wendell Smallwood's he's their best kickoff returner. You have to use him back there. I mean, he returned a kickoff for a touchdown last year, if I recall, until he got hurt. And the fact that Josh Huff was released, that takes another weapon away. So I don't really know who else he could use back there. If it's the same like with Darren Sproles, he's your best punt returner. So why not use him? I don't know that Smallwood wasn't going to get like 20 carries a game anyway. So I think the more ways you can use him, the better off you are. I think they do need to spread the ball around a little bit as far as the backfield is concerned. You're not going to see Corey Clement or Donnell Pumphrey on the field on Sunday, I don't think. But if you have like three guys who can do different things, plus you use Smallwood on special teams, I think that makes it that much better.
And that was the dialogue, whether or not Wendell Smallwood is the kick returner that limits the number of carries he gets out of the backfield.
Well, that was going to happen anyway. I mean, it happened last year too. There isn't an every down back on this team. They don't have a guy that's going to carry the load. I mean, Blount should be the short yardage and goal line guy. Sproles should be the guy who comes out of the backfield and catches passes and maybe, breaks things up with maybe 7 or 9 carries a game. And Smallwood's kind of similar to Blount, although I think he's a little more versatile because he can run between the tackles, he can run outside, and he can catch the ball a little bit. But I don't think you're going to see a running back by committee is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's Doug kind of hinted that it's going to kind of be a week-to-week thing, and I guess he'll play the hot hand. Although last year he had, Smallwood really played well in the Falcons game. He played well in the Steelers game, and people wanted to see more of him, but he only ended up with, 77 carries last year. So it seems like Doug is not really inclined to hand someone the ball 200-plus times.
Well, don't forget he got hurt last year, too, with a knee injury. Missed, I don't know how many games, but he missed a good chunk of it. But
Yeah,
there's not going to be once LaShawn McCoy is gone, you're not going to see. There's not an every down back on here. I think Doug likes to spread the ball around and give different people different roles.
Yeah.
But you're right. There is something to be said. If a guy's really running well early in a game, you might want to ride that hot hand a little bit more. But by and large, I think it'll be spread around more than just giving the ball to one guy all the time.
Okay, we were talking with Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City. Covers the Eagles, of course. Doug, Dave, over the years, we've heard Zach Ertz, a lot of targets, want to see him more involved. I think he kind of gets a bad rap for being inconsistent. If you really go through his numbers, I think he's a little bit more consistent than he gets credit for. But do you think this is a year that Ertz really takes that next leap into the upper tier of tight ends?
If he could just take one step after he catches the ball, I would be really impressed. It's time for him to stop averaging more than 10 inches, yards after the catch. At least break a tackle once in a while, and maybe gain a couple yards. That's the only thing that's really holding him back from being a premier tight end. For whatever reason, he never seems to shake loose and to get and turn that 15-yard reception into a 50-yard gain. He did a little bit in the preseason this year, which was kind of encouraging to see. So I think if he can do that, if he can learn to not go down on the first hit or to just break some tackles, make some bigger plays, then I think you'll see him emerge as one of the NFL's best tight ends. To be quite honest.
Yeah, he's got the skill set. And by the way, we asked our listeners which player will have the most catches this season. Alshon Jeffrey leading the pack with 53%. Zach Ertz number 2 at 41%. But here's the kicker, Dave. Darren Sproles was the third listed guy. He has 0% of the votes, but other has 6% of the votes. What other guy, other than the three I mentioned, would be in play to have the most catches on the Eagles this year?
Wow. Nobody.
Right, exactly.
But, they're really shortchanging Sproles there. He's annually been one of their top pass receivers.
Yeah.
Since he's been here. So I think they're kind of underestimating his value to the offense.
Okay.
He's going to be a big weapon as far as the passing game goes.
Which player has the most sacks this season? Is it Graham, Barnett, Long, or Curry?
Ooh, I'm going to go Graham. I think he's really starting to come into his own. He showed that last year. I know Barnett has shown a lot of potential, but if I'm going to go, I'll go with Brandon Graham. I think he's the guy most in position to get maybe even double-digit sacks this year.
60.
Curry just still hasn't impressed me. Everybody keeps saying this is the year he breaks through, and he never does. And Chris Long had 4 sacks last year, I think, with the Patriots. I think his best days might be behind him. Barnett has a lot of potential, but I'm going to go with Graham in that.
Okay, Dave. Number 1, your take on the Eagles. Your record for this season for Philadelphia.
9-7.
A 9-7 kind of year.
I reserve the right to change my opinion, only because I think I was 6-10 in my weekly predictions last year. But I think there's certainly potential there for them to challenge for the NFC East. There's no dominant team in that division. Initially I'm picking the Giants to win the division and maybe 10-6, but I could see the Eagles easily threatening that. If everybody stays healthy, if Wentz progresses like everybody thinks he's going to, if Pederson progresses like everybody thinks he's going to, except Mike Lombardi maybe, but I really think that they have what it takes. I think getting Ronald Darby was a huge addition for them. That really can lend some stability to the secondary, which they really needed. And I think if everything breaks right, I definitely think that they're at least a 9-win team.
Well, more from Dave in the Press of AtlanticCity.com, or pick up a copy of the Press. Dave Weinberg is at PressAC Weinberg for Eagles coverage all season long, and we'll be talking with Dave on our Weinberg Wednesday conversations about the Eagles and the 2017 edition right here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, Dave.
Oh, thank you, guys. I'm really happy to be back.